Okay, so the title of our story was The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses. Here in the picture, we see a character that we were able to identify later in the story, the, the spotted stallion. Here is the girl whose name we never really did hear. And just to mention again, this was the medal, and I said that this book was awarded the medal because of the beautiful illustrations. You can see that this took place in the desert with all of these desert plants called succulents that are made to retain water because there isn't much rain in the desert areas. Here again, the stallion, the girl, and some of the wild horses in the desert. The people were always moving from place to place, following the herds of buffalo because the buffalo herds would migrate. They would travel to different spaces. And in order to get the buffalo that they needed for their food, for their clothing, for their homes, they had to follow them. They had many horses to carry the teepees and all their belongings, and they trained their fastest horses to hunt the buffalo. So you see all the pictures of the different buffalo and the buffalo herds. There was a girl in the village who loved horses. She would often get up at daybreak in the morning, when the birds were singing about the rising sun. She led the horses to drink at the river. She spoke softly, and they followed her. People noticed that she understood horses in a special way. She knew which grasses they liked best, and where to find them shelter from the winter blizzards. If a horse was hurt, she would look after it. So those are horses at the river. These, as I said, were plants that would grow in a river. And I don't know if you noticed, but this is the reflection of the horses in the water. So here's the horse and here's this reflection, because the water would often reflect like a mirror the horses. Every day when she had helped her mother carry water and collect firewood, because that was one of her chores or some of her chores to help around her home, she would run off to be with the horses. She stayed with them in the meadows, but was careful never to go beyond the sight of her home because she wanted to make sure she could get home. One hot day, when the sun was overhead, she felt sleepy. She spread her blanket and lay down. It was nice to hear the horses eating and moving slowly among the flowers. Soon she fell asleep. A faint rumble of distant thunder did not waken her. Angry clouds began to roll out across the sky, with lightning flashing in the darkness beneath. But the fresh breeze and scent of rain made her sleep soundly. So there she is sleeping, but off to the side you'll notice there's these black clouds rolling in next to the teepees. And then, suddenly, and we know that always means something's going to happen, there was a flash of lightning, a crash and rumbling which shook the earth. The girl leapt to her feet in fright. Everything was awake. Horses were rearing up on their hind legs and snorting in terror. She grabbed a horse's mane and jumped on his back. There's the lightning, and here's the girl jumping on the horse's back, grabbing his mane, the fur or the hair on his head, on his neck, actually. In an instant, the herd was galloping away like the wind. She called to the horses to stop, but her voice was lost in the thunder. Nothing could stop them. She hugged her horse's neck with her fingers twisted into his mane. She clung on, afraid of falling under the drumming hooves. So we do know that lightning is dangerous. Thunder, not so much, but lightning can actually kill people. so the horses are terrified. The horses galloped faster and faster, chased by the thunder and lightning. They swept like a brown flood across hills and through valleys. Fear drove them on and on, leaving their familiar grazing grounds far behind. At last, the storm disappeared over the horizon. The tired horses slowed and then stopped and rested. Stars came out and the moon shone over the hills the girl had never seen before. She knew they were lost. So I do want to point out, I don't know if you paid attention, but the girl has long, black, flowing hair, and that's important to the end of the story as well. The next morning, she was awakened by a loud neighing. A beautiful spotted stallion was prancing to and fro in front of her, stamping his hooves and shaking his mane. He was strong and proud and more handsome than any horse she had ever dreamed of. He told her that he was the leader of all the wild horses who roamed the hills. He welcomed her to live with them. She was glad, and all her horses lifted their heads and neighed joyfully, happy to be free with the wild horses. Was just awakened, and here's the wild stallion with the spots. The people searched everywhere for the girl and the vanished horses. They were nowhere to be found. But a year later, 2 hunters rode into the hills where the wild horses lived. When they climbed a hill and looked over the top, they saw the wild horses led by the beautiful spotted stallion. Beside him rode the girl leading a colt. They called out to her, and she waved back, but the stallion quickly drove her away with all his horses. So the hunters saw her and they wanted to take her back to their home, but the stallion didn't want them to take her back. He wanted them to let her stay. So he tried to chase them off, and notice there's the little baby horse, the colt. Okay. The hunters galloped home and told what they had seen. So the men mounted their fastest horses and set out at once. We're going to try and get her, right? It was a long chase. The stallion defended the girl and the colt. He circled round and round them so that the riders could not get near her. They tried to catch him with ropes, but he dodged every one. He had no fear. His eyes shone like cold stars. He snorted, and his hooves struck as fast as lightning. The riders admired his courage. They might never have caught the girl, except her horse stumbled and fell. So these pictures are all of the stallion moving around and trying to keep the riders away. And here's the girl on the horse and the baby colt. The girl was glad to see her parents again because she got caught. And they thought she would be happy to be home again. But they soon saw she was sad and missed the colt and the wild horses. Each evening as the sun went down, people would hear the stallion neighing sadly from the hilltop above the village, calling for her to come back. The days passed. Her parents knew the girl was lonely. She became ill, and the doctors could do nothing to help her. They asked what would make her well again. "I love to run with the wild horses," she answered. "They are my relatives. If you let me go back to them, I shall be happy forevermore." Then here's the stallion, just a shadow because he's way up high and hard to see. And here he is neighing to the girl who's over here. These are her parent, or actually some other tribe members, not necessarily her. Her parents loved her and agreed that she should go back to live with the wild horses. They gave her a beautiful dress and the best horse in the village to ride. The spotted stallion led his wild horses down from the hills. The people gave them fine things to wear, colorful blankets and decorated saddles. They painted designs on the horses' bodies and tied eagle feathers and ribbons in their manes and tails. In return, the girl gave the colt to her parents, and everyone was joyful. And we know that giving them that colt was important because they needed horses. So here's the stallion, and here's all the other wild horses, and here's the tribe, the members of the tribe along here. Once again, the girl rode beside the spotted stallion. They were proud and happy together. But she did not forget her people. Each year she would come back, and she always brought her parents a colt. See, the buffalo even have like a baby in buffaloes. I've heard of buffalo. And then one year she did not return, and she was never seen again. But when the hunters next saw the wild horses, there galloped beside the mighty stallion a beautiful mare with a mane and tail floating like wispy clouds about her. They said the girl had surely become one of the wild horses at last. So I want to make sure you heard that line. They said the girl had surely become one of the wild horses at last. Today we are still glad to remember that we have relatives among the horse people, and it gives us joy to see the wild horses running free. Our thoughts fly with them. Once again, here's the proud stallion, and here's the mare. And the author made this beautiful design, the illustrator made this beautiful design here. Showed the heads of the horses here, which is probably one of the reasons why this book. All right, that's the end of the story. Good luck with your retelling chart.